We have some major news to discuss today as recent reports have come out regarding the Miami Heat highlighting that Duncan Robinson is untouchable. So I'm going to break down that report in this episode, as well as another star player is on the Heat's radar according to multiple rumors. So stay tuned for all that in this episode of Heat Digest. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. You guys have been killing it. We are on the road now, getting pretty close to 500 subscribers. So if you're watching this video right now and you are part of that 98% who aren't subscribed, scroll down and hit that button. It would mean the world to me in Houston. All right, Houston, let's get into the first topic of the day. A lot of news to discuss, and it is that Duncan Robinson has been named untouchable according to multiple reports. Now, this is a crazy 360 when you consider where they were last season with Robinson trying to give assets to get rid of that, what was at the time a pretty bad contract. Now, it's looking like it's a good contract, I guess, as the Miami Heat have made Duncan Robinson untouchable in quotes in trade talks per Jake Fisher. Now, Houston, let me hear your thoughts on this. This is an interesting one. Untouchable is a little crazy for Duncan, but he's shooting the ball unbelievably. He's back to the player that they expected him to grow into when he signed that fairly big deal. I believe it was 40 years, 80 million or something like that. What are your thoughts on this news? And are you a bit upset, or do you think it makes sense given his production and his integral key part to the team this season?
Duncan has done a really good job this year of really developing because he was strictly a three-point shooter and all of his reliance was on the three-point shot and really just spotting up. This year he's done a really good job of being able to put the ball on the floor and moving without the basketball and not solely running three-point line to three-point line. So the development in his game is great to see. The fact that he's now considered untouchable is kind of weird. I didn't think it would get to that point. I believe if someone makes the correct call, Miami might be willing to put him in a possible trade package. That's just me, though. I doubt that he's entirely untouchable. I believe like Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler are considered like legitimate. Don't even mention him, and maybe even Jaquez due to the fact that he's so young. Duncan is a surprise though to be considered untouchable at least.
Yeah, and let's say how it is. Duncan Robinson's not in the same level as those three players, not
Yeah.
including, and Jaquez's age is the thing. Looking at his stats here, I mean, last season he was basically a non-factor. Started one game, played half the game, 6 points. His shooting was still solid at 37%, but this year he's completely turned it around. 14 points a game, 1% from the three-point line at 7 attempts a game. Like, he's back to what we saw from him again when he signed that contract after 2020 or 2021 season, whatever one it was. The point is, he has been very good, but I still, again, this is from Jake Fisher, pretty reliable guy, but he throws some stuff out there. If he's not going to be the sticking point, I cannot believe if it was, let's say, between a Donovan Mitchell trade and not happening, they're not going to include Duncan Robinson. Like, I think Duncan Robinson would go in a trade like that, but I mean, it does make sense. Like, he's a very important part of this team. He started half the games or a bit less than half the games for the Heat, and he's a very valuable asset that a lot of teams could use. So I don't think he's fully untouchable, but I do think given the right piece, which we'll discuss now in a second, maybe he could be let go. So any quick thoughts on this before I move on to something that's kind of tied into this, but a little bit interesting?
Just that Duncan, I believe, is one of the players, along with Jovic, that would be considered like the two highest level players on Miami that would be available.
Yep.
No, he just got the label of untouchable, but that's how I classify Duncan, myself at least.
Yeah, and again, we're not going to trade Bam, we're not going to trade Jimmy, and you're not going to
Yeah.
trade Jaime Jaquez or any of these guys. Jovic, we discussed, probably available, and Duncan Robinson, I understand why they don't, because they're trying to win right now, and he's a very important piece, but if you get that piece that puts them over the top, then I think they'd be willing to part ways. So let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on that. Now, we have a pretty bigger topic now to discuss, which is the Heat have been linked to Lauri Markkanen. Now, whether this has been through other articles, through reports, through rumors, we don't know the level of interest for sure and how high it is, but Houston, Lauri Markkanen is a very interesting guy to discuss. He is a very good player. It came out a few weeks ago, may have even been over a month or 2 months ago now, that Utah was looking for like 4 or 5 first-round picks. I would suspect that has maybe dropped, especially with what the Raptors got for Pascal Siakam. Obviously, a bit of a different leverage situation there. But you can look at this here, and this is kind of like, I guess, kind of a joke, kind of a meme, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense. You can see here in the first screenshot, the Heat have made Robinson untouchable, and the next screenshot, I've been told the Jazz will listen to anyone on the roster. He's not untouchable, but it's take one of your untouchables to get him. We saw some Heat fans out there saying, what does this mean? What are they trying to say? But jokes aside, we've seen here, been linked in the past. This was about a month ago. Should the Miami Heat entertain a trade for the Jazz star Lauri Markkanen? I want to get your thoughts on this, and I don't know if the Heat are actively pursuing him. I've heard some rumblings. I think it may have been Zach Lowe or someone. Like, you hear it around the league when you're watching these shows, and you see it on Twitter, that the Heat are pursuing a guy like this, and they need another big man, stretch four type player. What are your thoughts on Lauri Markkanen? Would he fit this team? And then we'll get into some potential packages that could maybe go down that we can think of.
I would love to see Marketing in a Miami jersey. I again, the price tag like Levine and Mitchell and all these other guys that we've like talked about in hypothetical trade scenarios, it's going to be massive. But if we can get the right package together and get him in Miami, I think it would put Miami in the top two, at least in the Eastern Conference. I know we're at like the 5 seed right now, battling with Indiana, and the 1, 2, and 3 spots between Boston, Philly, and Milwaukee are really just going to be interchanging between the three of them all year long. If we can get marketed, put him next to Bam Adebayo, we would be over the top, in my opinion, just because of his presence in the paint. The defense would get better. His ability to rebound would be just very, very useful for Miami. I love the trade idea.
Yeah, and he's obviously a
Love it.
stretch four, and you can look at his stats this season: 24 points a game, 9 rebounds, two
Yeah.
assists. And again, the biggest thing with him, he's just a fairly big body, big presence. He's not necessarily a great defender, but when you put him alongside a bunch of other great defenders, he'll be able to elevate his defense. He's playing in Utah, and here's the issue, I guess, with the potential trade that we'll discuss now. We can throw out some names that could happen. Is that Utah's in a pretty much a full rebuild slash, I don't even know if I consider it retool. Like, they play well sometimes. We saw them at the start of last year go off to a great start. But they have guys like Markkanen, who in theory they could be building around Sexton. They have all these young guys, Walker Kessler. But I suspect they're going to want young guys or picks rather than, say, the Toronto Raptors, who went out and got, quickly and Barrett for OG, where they're trying to kind of still stay competitive. I don't know what the Heat, I mean, it would take, and I'll ask you this question now, and I'll ask everyone who's watching. Would you be willing to give up, I guess, Jovic and 2 firsts plus matching salary for Lauri Markkanen? Because, again, it used to be 4 or 5 first-round picks. If you consider Jovic a first-round pick, and then you're giving up essentially 3 firsts for Markkanen. But I could, kind of think of a handful of teams out there that would at least consider giving Utah Jazz 3 first round. We just saw the Raptors get 3 first round picks for Siakam, different situation, and they were kind of bad picks. But would you consider that for Lauri Markkanen, who's ever since going to Utah? Obviously, when he goes to the Heat, his stats would decline a little bit because he's not going to be the focal point. But I don't know, 3 firsts might be steep, and that might be the holding point here. Is that, and the Heat don't really have a super crazy young asset, I guess, besides Jaime Jaquez, who they're not going to give away, and I guess Jovic, if you consider that. Like, I feel like the Jazz might go looking elsewhere for a bigger blue chip prospect.
I believe Jovic has a decent weight to his name.
Yep.
He's young. It's only his really considered his second year. He didn't play a lot last year in his rookie season, and he was a high draft pick. He's looked really good recently, especially starting all these games as of late. So I believe his name carries some weight. Whether or not it'll translate is to be determined, obviously. But for the picks, it's interesting with Miami. If it was any other team and we were in this scenario, I'd probably say absolutely not. But it's the Miami Heat. They do better drafting late in the draft overall, not just the first round, but late in the draft, taking undrafted players than they do taking like these high overall play like these. They never have a high draft pick. You never see them taking like a top 10 pick and it like works out for them unless it's a total rebuild. So I'm okay with like having late draft picks or even taking undrafted players because I have faith in Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra and the rest of this organization because year after year they do that and it works. Like we made it to the finals with like 8 undrafted guys and
Yep.
everyone was like, how do they keep doing this? And if we were able to bring in Marketing, he's not old. He's not even like 28 years old
He's
yet. He's still young.
26.
Yeah, he's 26 years old. Like and put him next to Bam. I know Eric Spoelstra credited Jovic about when him and Bam are in the lineup together, it really diversifies the lineup and it makes problems for everyone that they play. But like, could you imagine if you replace Jovic with Marketing? Like the size of the lineup would drastically increase. The minutes for Bam and Marketing would be able to be shared. So we could have one on the floor really at all times. Again, the defense, he's not going to be Matumbo in the paint, but 6'8" or 6'10", 6'11", like frame with the ability to rebound the way he does, it'd work. It really would work. Again, his minutes would be blemished and along with his points and his stats and everything else, but so would everyone else is on Miami. And that's just what you have to do and you have to accept if you want to be able to add another key piece and really make a good run at this championship.
Yeah, and if they think of Markkanen as an asset going for, I mean, again, he's 26. They sign him to maybe they sign him to another extension and then build the next era of Heat basketball. We're looking way in the future, whenever if Jimmy ever leaves or whenever that happens. So like he'd be a big piece of the future. So I think 3 first rounders would be interesting. But again, maybe the Heat go with the mindset of they've been injured a lot this season. They want to not make as big of a splash because when they're healthy, they're one of the best teams in the league, which is kind of the worrying thought because we've seen how that goes down before. But that'll be interesting to see, and that'll wrap it up. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Do you want to see a Lauri Markkanen trade? Because I think it would be very good for the Heat. Make sure to hit the subscribe button again, and we'll see you guys tomorrow or later today.